Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Gyn. Today we're talking about workplace romances and the employment law consequences. Toronto Mayor John Tory recently resigned after news broke earlier this year that he'd had an affair with a 31-year-old staffer. Now, while workplace romances aren't illegal, they can cause significant problems for employees and employers, especially when there's a power imbalance. On the other hand, the workplace may be the source of the majority of social interaction for many people, which can ultimately lead to workplace romances developing. Dating in the workplace isn't always bad. Many people meet their spouses at work. What is the law around workplace romances, and how can employees and employers protect themselves from liability? Here today to discuss this topic are two employment lawyers, Mackenzie Irwin and Ron Minken. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Now, Mackenzie, let's get to the basics. I said at the top that workplace romances are not illegal, but they can create legal problems, especially when there's a power imbalance. So what are some of the types of problems that they can create?
Yeah, so the liabilities that surround workplace romances can kind of be put into two different categories. One is a possible abuse of power, and the second is non-consensual relationships or workplace sexual harassment. So with the abuse of power, it's really the concern with whether a relationship can ever really truly be consensual when there is an imbalance of power and the relationship is between a subordinate and their manager. All it would really take in that situation is for a subordinate to say that it wasn't consensual, and that's really it. That would be liability. There would be some liability there under human rights legislation for the manager and for the company, making those power imbalances really risky and those relationships generally not advisable. The second is the non-consensual relationships leading to sexual harassment, and whether the romance could be a truly healthy consensual relationship between two consenting adults or as workplace harassment is something that should be a major concern for employers, because all of their employees, all employers have a legal obligation to provide a workplace free of sexual harassment and any other inappropriate harassment in the workplace. So they have to protect their employees from sexual harassment and promptly investigate any potential instances of sexual harassment in the workplace. So there's a lot of complexities around workplace romances, like the power imbalances and the liabilities that result from those relationships are something that should be a very big concern for employers in Ontario in particular.
Ron, same question to you. Is there anything you want to add about what some of the risks associated with workplace romances are?
Well, thanks, Christine. I agree with Mackenzie. It is a slippery slope between consenting to a workplace relationship or romance and allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault. Because the key issue is consent. What is consent? What is voluntary consent? Because that would only be in a situation where there's no fear of retribution, but arguably it doesn't exist in a workplace relationship or at the workplace itself. The risks, litigation, huge defense costs, reputational damage to the company, the individual, and also perhaps the community.
Now, in the case of Mayor Tory, Ron, there was a power imbalance. Do you think that this created a problem in that case?
100%. I mean, Mr. Tory, Mayor Tory, was the number one person in the organization. And he had the ability to empower, to discipline, to fire, to give raises, and a host of other things. So because of this fear of retribution, there certainly was this imbalance, and it really should not have happened. And we'll discuss later on, I guess, the other issues around that.
Mackenzie, anything you want to add to that? Do you think that power imbalance ultimately is why Mayor Tory resigned? Or, I mean, of course, there are all kinds of other things, like it was an affair. He cheated on his wife. But anything you want to add in about 30 seconds?
Yeah, the optics of preferential treatment or using the workplace relationship to one party's advantage is certainly an ongoing concern for most employers, and generally speaking, something that is in particular like a concern for workplace romances.
Okay, well, we've got to go to commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk about What happens when a workplace romance starts as consensual but falls apart? We will be right back.